Right, so we've got a tricycle here with a broken peg which goes on the back and lets the tricycle tow a trailer. So due to some backing up through a door, that snapped off. So I thought I'd go through fixing that more from the point of view of issues and problems and things, rather than just putting a little bit of wood in a hole. So the first problem is making some room on the workbench. So at the moment there's some beryllium copper for springs, there's a electric tricycle electronics cabinet thing, there's a broken printer, and there's a few bits of paper and some spray paint. So I'm going to clear that off and make some room. That's always a problem. Horizontal surfaces seem to collect clutter, so that's number one. Right, that's better. We've got some room now. So there's the problem. It's snapped off. So in the background you can hear the CNC machine going, so I always try and have something being made if possible while I'm doing something else. I'll try and double up on the time that I've got available. So anyway, here's the peg. Here's the peg. So, first thing that happens on these things, you get surprises quite often. So the peg's here. Whoops. That's another thing that happens, you drop stuff on the floor. Right, so the peg looks like quite a fat dowel, but if you look at the end, it's been disguised. It's a fairly thin dowel disguised as a fat dowel, so it isn't as strong as it looks. I don't really know why that was done. So as well as a surprise, we've now got a decision to make. Do we remake what was in there originally, or do we drill a bigger hole and put a larger, fatter dowel in? Now, I can't think of a reason that that wouldn't work with a larger dowel, but do I want to do that? Usually I try and make what was there originally, so it's going to be a bit harder to make a dowel with two diameters than one. But on the basis they might have done that for a reason, I can't think what it is. I think for the first attempt at a repair, I'll remake what was in there. So the second surprise is there's a screw there. I didn't expect that. I thought this would be glued in. So maybe they're expecting this to be broken quite often and this to be a replaceable part. So that's another issue. You can sometimes buy replacement parts. So I'll have a quick look on the internet and see whether I could just buy a new one. If you're short of time, then buying a new part is the way to go. In fact, in a lot of cases it's probably just the way to go. Something like this, which is pretty simple and easily makeable, I'm not sure that's a good idea. If you're short of money, then you can make it, but time is the thing that you can't replace. So I'll have a quick look, see if it's purchasable somewhere. Well, as happens quite often, they don't seem to have a spare parts page on the internet. Their website is set up to sell you stuff, not let you fix stuff. So that's a bit of a shame. But it's not a problem. It's round and I've got a wood lathe, so that's something that I could probably make. I think I'm going to try and make what was in there originally, so I'll make another one of these. Probably I might take measurements, but I might just make this one by eye. So the first thing to do is try and get the old rubbish broken off bit out. So we need some screwdrivers, and there's another little point. Always make sure you got the right size screwdriver. Small one like that, that's definitely not the right size. That will just screw your screw up. There we go, that's more like it. So I'm a bit surprised that that's there at all. The whole thing is sort of screwed together, So yeah, maybe it is designed to be replaceable. So there's a little screw, and I always put them in a pot. You don't want to lose your screws and bits and bobs. There's nothing worse than that. Right, so I'm going to have a go at getting this out and we'll see what's in there. Hopefully it'll just... oh yeah, that's just pulled out. Unfortunately only about half of it is pulled out, so we'll move on to the next stage, which is a bit of a struggle usually, and see if we can get that out. It seems to have split and that doesn't want to come out. I don't think that's part of... I don't think it's supposed to be a square slot in there because that's round. So somehow I'm going to have to try and get that out. So next stage, dismantling, and that's usually a lot harder than it sounds. This is fairly easy because all the screws are quite obvious, but a lot of products these days, people seem to be allergic to screws. So a lot of stuff, especially plastic, electronic stuff, clips together. Yeah, things fall on the floor. Let's put that in the pot. And again, you need the right screwdriver size. It just feels right when you got the right screwdriver size. If it feels wrong, probably is. Right, what have we got here? So even something as simple as this. Right, so those wooden bits have come off, but it hasn't fallen apart. So there's another surprise here. There's two screws which are something to do with these bolts. Yeah, so another problem. These are hex bolts, so I'll go and find some tools to undo those. But it looks like these yellow bits are just decoration, although you do need one of them off in order to get to the bolt on the side. So I don't know whether it's the ones on the top or the ones on the side I need to undo. But we'll probably end up undoing everything and then putting it back together again later on. Right, let's have a go with the ones on top. Oh, they're quite loose. In fact, they're very loose. Has it gone wobbly? Yeah, so it's gone wobbly, so I think I'll just take those off. So the reason I'm doing this is so that I can pick the thing up and maybe drill out that wood and maybe have a closer look at it without having to lift an entire tricycle. This is no different to electronics really. You dismantle and get a sub-assembly out, and it's a lot easier to handle. There you go, so it's easier for me to pick that up and have a look at it and move it round than it is the entire tricycle. So that's interesting. How's the back wheel stay on there? It's loose, but there's no screws there. So I don't know how that is staying in there. And it's a bit concerning because we want to fiddle around with something that's close here, and there may be some sort of fixing through, although looking at it I think what it is, the axle runs all the way through, because I can see a metal axle in there, and that's what's holding it on. So I think if you take the wheels off, as you can see the wheels have got some sort of magic bolt there, but if you took those off somehow, how do you take those off? No idea. Let's have a go. So of course make sure you got the right size screwdriver for the job. Does that pop off? And here's the next problem. You sometimes end up doing little bits of damage to things, unfortunately. because plastic and metal, the metal always wins. I don't know if that's coming out or it's just flexing. So there might be some instructions for this, but I think we can probably get away with not taking that off. Although it's going to be difficult to drill that out if I need to. Let's see if I can dig it out with a screwdriver. Yeah, it does look to be just a broken dowel, and it is maybe moving. So I'm going to try and lever it out or dig it out. I don't think we want to keep it, but it'd be nice to... Oh, there we go, nice to measure the diameter of it maybe. Come on, there you come. No, that's stuck in there. So maybe it was glued after all, but then why was it screwed? This is where I quite like the Star Trek tractor beam to just pull things. But unfortunately, pullers are a bit specialised. Right, I pulled another bit out, but it's not all of it, unfortunately. So I think maybe I might have to drill that out, which isn't fun. Maybe keep going, pulling it out, bit by bit, fibre by fibre. So the screw's out, so I don't think there's anything holding it in there apart from maybe just a close fit. Yeah, so it's just coming out splinter by splinter. And now it's getting harder and harder to get the pliers down there, so I'm going to drill it out. Back in a minute. Okay. Quick interaction with the drill press, and I've drilled it out. So the screw, where is the screw? That's the problem. Must be that one. The screw, probably. Yeah, so the screw just nips into the wood there, so it's not a self-tapper, it's a semi-self-tapping screw, so that'll push into the dowel and stop it falling out. Might drill a hole in there. So now we need to make another peg, so I'm going to do that on the lathe. I'm going to find a bit of wood and chuck it up and then just turn it down. I'll probably measure stuff a little bit, but probably doing it just by eye and by fit. Right, I found some round stuff, so I'm going to chop a bit of that off. I'll stick that in the lathe, and we'll have a go at making one of these things. Right, next thing, set up in the lathe. I've got a respirator on. I always wear a respirator when I'm doing woodwork, whatever the wood is, whatever I'm doing. So I'm just going to turn down. I've taken some measurements. That's another thing that's useful to do. I've taken some measurements, so I know how long I need to make the two diameters, and I know what the diameters are, so I'll be using some calipers, and these are just plastic ones. They're only accurate to, or only even have a resolution of 0.1 millimeters, but for something like this that's fine, because the fit will be done finally, probably by sanding it down and so on. So I'm just going to whiz this down now. So here's the part, so we can take quite a lot away. What I'd probably try and do is do one here and then maybe leave enough space for another one over here. Let's have a look. So it's 40 millimeters long, so I can just do that. I'm hoping I can do it in one shot, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. a lot of this just feel. You just got to work out how much you're taking off and then measure it, see how much is left, and take off a certain number of what you just took off, if you see what I mean. You can always take it off, but difficult putting it back on again. Okay, so that's about the right diameter there, 13.7. We need a little bit off there, and then I'm going to match the rest of it to this bit here. See what it looks like by eye. Yeah, we're looking pretty good there. I think that'll do. So now I just need to measure the length. So that's 20 mil. So I'm going to cut it off here. So I need 20 mil from there to there. So let's say about there. And then it looks to be 23, a little bit longer, down to here. So I need to cut out from that edge down here. So I'll probably start a little bit over. What's the diameter? 8. So we need to go down to 8, which is that. Which is quite small, so I'm going to do that now. Alright, so I'm going to go for 8.5, just so I got a larger amount of material that I can remove. So we're at 10. Seems very small. So that's another stage of fixing stuff. Disbelief. I can't believe that it's actually going to be smaller than that, but it is. So I'm turning it down on what's going to be the waste material end, so that I can get down to about 8. That's still a bit big, but it's going to be that big all the way along. So I'll get the correct diameter out here, which will be cut off in the end. So if I go slightly under, it doesn't matter. And then work my way up once I've got the right diameter here. So this is another stage of fixing stuff, just taking time. Right, so I'm going to take the centre off and try it and see whether it fits in the hole. Yeah, so that fits fine, so the end's fine. So if I just continue all the way up, there's a nice snug fit, so a little bit over 8 is what we need. Put that back on. Measurements are fine, but something like that, where it could be a different diameter down inside the hole, best to try it out. Right, so I think I'm going to actually cut it off now and then have some trial fits. I think we're pretty close, but I might have to put it back on the lathe to get it down to the correct size. I think we're still oversized here. Yeah, so that's going to fit in there. I'm going to cut the end off that, making sure that I don't cut too much off. 23 is what I've measured it as, so I haven't got a nice square shoulder on there. I'm going to sort that out before I cut it off. Actually, this is another stage of stuff, changed my mind. I'm going to actually turn it down while it's on there, because a looser fit isn't going to matter because there's a screw holding it in. And it's going to be hard to centre it once I've cut it off. So I'm just going to take it down to that size there. It's just under 9. If I need to take more off, I can sand it down. I'm going to try and get a better shoulder on there as well. Okay, pretty happy with that. So I'm going to measure 23, cut it off, and we should be more or less done. There's 23. So if we cut it off a little bit over length, in case I've measured it wrong, let's see how it goes. So yeah, it does actually fit in there, but it's a pretty tight fit. So just by rotating it and squashing the fibres down, it's fitting in there pretty well. I'm going to sand that down a bit. I deliberately made it a little bit oversized. I deliberately sloped it a little bit so it was larger at the top in diameter than the bottom. Right, let's try that. Yep, so I think it's just a little bit long there. I did cut it a little bit over length. Yeah, so it's 20. It's 24 and a half. So I need to cut a couple of millimeters off. We'll sand it down. Let's sand it. Right, sanded the end off, and now we've got a really nice fit. So all I need to do now is cut that off. Right, so there we go. So I just need to cut that off to match the original peg. So you can see that's a pretty good match, and I think we're done. Sand it down. There we go. One replacement peg. Alright, so we just need to put it back together again. So there's the peg. That's quite a nice tight fit. Just need to find the screw. Just screw that back in there. So that just retains it, I think. There you go. So that's not actually going in. So I am going to have to put a screw in there. Oh, sorry, a hole. So we're not done yet. It's a false stop. Right, so the screw's mucked up the edge, so I'm going to drill a hole into that, which is going to have to be about 3mm deep and about, it seems to be a 4mm screw. So I've decided to do this with a pin vise because you get a bit more control over what you're doing, and something as small as this could be a bit tricky. So we need to go into probably about half the diameter. We're getting close there. Let's try that. So now of course you've got to line the two holes up. That's a bundle of fun. There we go. That ain't coming out. So I think I fixed it. Right, of course now reassembly is the opposite of disassembly. So let's put the rear wheels back on. So there we go, warts and all, stuff falling on the floor. I think we now have a new peg. Right, see how that goes. See how long it takes before it gets snapped off. And then of course, that took about, that must have been nearly 2 hours to do that in total. And then of course you got the tidying up. I just realised you don't see a lot of that in YouTube videos and people making stuff. The tidying up that goes on afterwards.